Hello and welcome, beginners. I'm going to be asking the question today, when are you ready for your first gig? I would say before you think about getting bookings, there's a few things that you need covered. So you need to be prepared. So as long as you've got most of these things covered that I'm going to go through, hopefully you're ready. First one, know your equipment. You need to know every single piece of equipment that you have and how it works. You need to know what every single button does, every single function, what it can do, what it can't do. You have to make sure that everything works. Just experiment and find out what the buttons do. If there's a button on your equipment that doesn't work, it's time to get it sorted before your first event, or maybe take it back for that warranty. This is a must. You have to make sure that you know every single button works, what it does, everything like that. There could be a button on your equipment that's to your advantage, but you've never used it before. Another thing, you may set up one day at a gig and your equipment isn't working properly because somebody's pressed a button on your equipment. If you know what every single button does, you can identify what button they've pressed and why things aren't going the way they should do, or why things aren't working how they should be. So make sure you know what every single button does. If you're using software, make sure you know how the software works. Try everything. You'll need to know this before. It's no time to learn on your event day. Let's say, for example, also with your software, if you have a problem, make sure you know how to boot up your software again, just in case you need to. If you don't know how to do it and nothing's working or everything's frozen up, big problems. So make sure you know the ins and outs of your software. Another one, make sure you know how to set up your equipment. You need to know where all those cables go. Make sure that they're plugged in to the correct inputs and make sure they go to the right outputs. You need to know this. Using your speakers, you need to know about placement because you're going to be putting these in different environments. You may be using these indoors, outdoors, on a stage, on a hard floor, carpeted floor. You might even be setting up in a corner, but you still need to know where to set up your speakers to make sure that you've got good coverage and everything sounds good. Have you purchased anything like trussing or tripods or some kind of framework? Make sure you build this before and make sure that it's safe. Make sure everything is there, because the last thing you want to do is say, oh yes, I've got that covered. I've got all these trussing and tripods and what have you in their boxes. I've never built them before, but I can build them on event day. Event day is not the time to be looking through an instruction manual. You need to make sure that you can put up your equipment safely and correctly, because you will find on event day you will have a certain slot in a schedule to get into a venue, set up your equipment and be ready. You have to make sure that you're quite swift at this, so you need to get it covered. You need to make sure that you've built your equipment before, whether it's your facade, your trussing, your tripods, anything that you need to build. Make sure it's complete, you know how to build it and you know how to break it down, and make sure that when it's set up, it's nice and safe. Another thing, you need to know how to set up a microphone and correctly. As a DJ, you're likely to be using a microphone. You need to make sure that you've bought the right microphone and that you know how to connect it up. You need to know how to set up microphones if they're going to be used for speeches. The last thing you want is embarrassing feedback. You need to know how to test a microphone. Make sure you place them in the right place so that they can be used. And if you do get feedback, you need to know how to eliminate it. But knowing how to set up a microphone correctly can save you so much trouble and embarrassment. So make sure you know how to set up a microphone correctly. Another one, you need to know the music that you have. Make sure that you know your music inside out. You need to know how long the intros are. You need to know where the outros are. You need to know where the build-ups are, the breakdowns. You need to know which are your high tempo songs, which are your low tempo, your mid tempo songs. You need to know where your loop points are. You need to know where to put your cue points. All of this you need to know. So you need to know your music, what you've got, and how you can use it. You will need to know the classics. You will need to know the party tracks. You will have to learn the artist names and the tracks to the artists. It will come in time. And if you're a young DJ, you need to know what the more mature guests listened to when they were growing up. And if you're a mature DJ, you'll need to know what the youngsters are listening to. Make sure you know what the latest hits are. And if you can, try and get hold of the latest hits, because you just might need to rely on these. Another thing, I think you're going to need to know how to transition in more than one way. Using performance pads is great, blending is great, but there'll be times when these may not work. Let's say you're moving from a high BPM to a low BPM, one genre to another genre. You need to mix things up. There can also be times when you are using the same way to transition. If you're transitioning the same way for every track, your set will be predictable. Try and mix things up a bit. Have a few tricks up your sleeve. You need to be mixing, transitioning, blending in a few different ways. It will make your set more exciting. So I think you need this covered. You will expect to know more than one or two. Another thing, make sure you have the right equipment. The equipment that you've got at home, that you're experimenting on or that you're practicing on, may not be adequate for that event. The cables that you've got, you will need cables maybe 5 times or more longer than the cables that you're using at home. The speakers that you've got, you will need speakers that are much larger, that can be turned up a lot louder, because you're going to have large groups of people talking, dancing, singing. They're making a lot of noise. You will need speakers that can go much louder than all of this crowd noise. So you need bigger speakers. The last thing you want is inadequate equipment that's going to overheat or fail because it simply isn't powerful enough and it's working to its limits. Don't think that you can go to your venue and find a table to set up all your equipment. Make sure you have a table for your turntables and mixer, or your controller and your computer and your CDJs. So you need to provide all of the equipment. Make sure that you have got the equipment that can withstand the demands of an event. Another one that I preach, make sure that you can carry every single piece of your equipment. Don't turn up at an event with twin 18s that you can't carry on your own. There may be nobody available to help you move your equipment. So make sure you can transport your equipment on your own. There may be a situation where you need to transport all of your equipment. So make sure that you can carry every single piece of equipment yourself. And if you can't, you obviously need to be prepared with a helping hand that you provide. Don't expect to go to a venue and expect someone to be helping you unload and set up. Make sure you've got this one covered. Another thing you're going to need to be prepared for when you go to an event and you are the DJ, you are the musical expert in that room. Everybody is going to expect that you know absolutely everything about music, but obviously you're a beginner DJ. They will not know that you've got learner on your forehead. But what you need to do again is do your homework, brush up on the tracks that you know are being played at parties. You will know there are certain tracks that are played. You will need to know what the latest tunes are, the latest party tracks. The last thing you want is someone to say, oh, have you got this track by this artist? Or this classic and you don't know what they're talking about, that's going to be extremely embarrassing. So really you need to brush up on what's happening in the music world, what people are listening to, what the tracks are that are the party bangers, the classics. Do your homework when it comes to music. You're going to need to do this. It's paramount. Another one, going back to the microphone. Make sure that you are confident using a microphone. At some point in the event, you will be expected to use the microphone. And at some point in an event, you will be using a microphone. Be confident using a microphone. Don't be scared of the microphone. You need to overcome any fears. Work on it. Know what to say confidently. Another one, have you got faith in the equipment that you have? Does it work all the time? Does it work flawlessly? You need to make sure that you've got equipment that works flawlessly and can do the job that it's meant to do. Another one, is your equipment road ready? You might have all of the equipment and you think you've got everything covered. You might think you've got the best equipment. Your equipment is so reliable. You might have so much faith in your equipment and you think, yes, I've got everything. I'm ready to go now. I've got all I need. Is it road ready? The last thing you want is your equipment suffering knocks, being damaged. It's expensive equipment. Have you got bags for all of those cables? Have you got protective bags? Have you got flight cases for the delicate equipment? You need to make sure that your equipment is road ready. The last thing you want is all of your equipment cluttering around, unboxed or uncased or unprotected, and it gets to the venue and something's damaged. When I mean road ready, I don't suggest you move your equipment around in the boxes that you bought it in, simply because you don't have the time on the day to be taking out polystyrene and bags and whatever in this nice delicate way. There's no time for that. Make sure that your equipment is in sturdy, tough, road ready bags or flight cases, padded bags, so that you need to quickly unzip these things, quickly get them out and quickly put them away. You haven't got time for putting polystyrene and polythene bags around things and nice and neatly sliding them back in the boxes and taping it all up. No, you don't have that time. You need to make sure your equipment is road ready in nice cases, flight cases, padded bags, etc. You need to be road ready, so make sure your equipment is. Another thing, do you have insurance? Every event I've done, the venue demands public liability insurance. So make sure you have insurance. If you don't have insurance, you are not going to be able to do your first gig. Other than the venue requiring your public liability insurance, you don't need me to tell you why you need insurance. Accidents can happen. Another thing, do you have PAT certificates? These are portable appliance testing certificates to make sure that your equipment, your electrical equipment, is electrically safe and sound. Some venues require this. Most venues that I have been in require this. So make sure that you have this, just so that you have this covered. Another thing, do you know how to write out a risk assessment? Do you know how to write out a method statement? Venues I've been to require this before I start to entertain. So make sure that you are knowledgeable when it comes to writing out a risk assessment, and make sure that you're knowledgeable when it comes to writing out a method statement. If you don't know how, work on it. There are more, much more, depending on the individual. But above and beyond everything else, you need to be confident. You need to tell yourself you can do it. Believe you can do it. You got what it takes. Tell yourself that. You're in charge. Make it your day. You will have nothing to worry about. We've all been there. Whether you're a mature DJ or a young DJ, you think of your big DJs, the biggest DJs in the world. There was a point where they done their first gig. And don't forget, that person out there, whoever I might be talking to, and you're doing your first gig, you could be the next big thing. Think about that. After that, all I can say is I wish you so much luck. Thank you so much for listening.